Have you ever been looking through Steam for a game to play and find that nothing really looks interesting to you? Maybe your old favourites like RuneScape and WoW have lost their appeal, or new titles like Diablo IV and Overwatch 2 are just asking too much from you. In this video, we will take a look at how gaming has changed since the early 2000s and what decisions are being made by publishers and developers that negatively affect your gaming experience. With that said, let's go back in time and look at a classic gaming experience from over 20 years ago. The first game that I remember playing obsessively was actually the 1999 release Unreal Tournament. I was 11 or 12 by the time I started playing it, and it had been out for a few years by this point. I used to play it on my brother's laptop with a ball mouse that would clog up because of how long I played. Unreal Tournament looked incredible at the time, with its deep space setting and head-spinning galactic backdrops. It utilised the first generation of the Unreal Engine, which would be an extremely powerful engine for when it was made, and in later iterations like Unreal 5, would blur the lines between the virtual world and reality. The story of Unreal Tournament was pretty simple. You're a gladiator in a dystopian future where blood sports are the greatest form of entertainment. You're selected for a tournament with the aim of fighting your way to the top and competing in a 1v1 deathmatch against the current champion of the tournament, Xan. You'll fight against opponents with basic combat skills at first, and soon find yourself pitted against seasoned veterans of the Unreal Tournament. You'll need to make the most of the advanced weaponry and gadgets available to you to come out on top. The game featured a wide array of futuristic weapons, ranging from the more grounded sniper and pistols, to the more ridiculous Ripper and Redeemer firing whirling saw blades and a guided nuclear warhead, respectively. There were power-ups like invisibility and overhealth, as well as environmental interactions like jump pads and teleporters on the various maps. And the game featured some of the most iconic arena shooter maps of all time, like Morpheus and Face. Once you had completed the campaign, you may try your hand at online matches and play versus other people, with Insta-Gib shock rifles being the most fun and sweaty time. Although this game was made in 1999 and designed by a handful of people, the passion they had for it really showed, and Unreal Tournament, along with Quake 3 released not long after, would be the godfathers of the arena shooter genre. Unreal Tournament delivered on the simple but addictive competitive shooter experience, and I think there are plenty of people who are hit with a wave of nostalgia whenever they hear Monster Kill, Kill, Kill. A few years later, in 2008, I bought a game called Resistance 2, and it was probably the best value for any game I've ever purchased. It had a single-player campaign, a massive multiplayer mode, and what I would say is the best 4-player co-op mode in any game I've ever played. Resistance 2 was set in an alternate version of 1950s America, with you taking control of Nathan Hale and helping fight off an invading alien force. The campaign follows on from the first Resistance game, and will see you travel across the United States and beyond while the story unfolds. The game features many great set pieces as you fight the alien hordes with powerful alternate history weapons. However, where Resistance 2 really came into its own was in the multiplayer modes, boasting the largest multiplayer matches available on the PS3 at the time, with a staggering 60-player capacity, with death matches and huge skirmishes being the main appeal. Then there was the co-op mode, which sees you working as part of a team to complete various missions during a sideline campaign story taking place at the same time as the single-player game. This was the best part of Resistance 2, and where I spent the majority of my time. The missions were varied with different objectives to complete. The classes were interesting and different enough that you would need certain combinations to even complete some missions on the higher difficulties, and the progression was great, with new unlocks and upgrades being made available the more you played. Resistance 2 had an absolute ton of content, and everything that could be unlocked in the game had to be earned through gameplay. That meant no buying XP boosts, no loot boxes or battle passes, and no in-game shop. It was a complete game, and the developers clearly made it with the players in mind, even trying to innovate in the console space with the largest multiplayer ever seen by that point, along with a huge amount of unlocks across the various game modes. And then it came, when I was 17 years old in college. Modern Warfare 2. This game was the death of my social life and my grades, and I loved every second of it. This to me was the peak of gaming. I completed everything on Modern Warfare 2. I got the Platinum Trophy, I got to level 70, 10th Prestige, I called in multiple nukes. In 1 year of playing this game, I racked up a 36-day playtime. To put that into perspective, that is a 10th of an entire year just playing a game. The campaign was incredible. The Spec Ops missions were fun and extremely challenging on Veteran, but the multiplayer is where the joy was. It was pure, unbridled chaos. The Infinity Ward dev team must have inner ear problems because they can't balance for shit. I'm ashamed to say I was a quickscoper, running around the map using sniper rifles like a shotgun and taking part in the Rust 1v1s that everyone used to love. But if this seems like too much work for you, then you could swap out for an actual shotgun that had the range of a sniper rifle, like the Akimbo 1887s. If you couldn't be bothered aiming, you could use a one-man army noob-tube class to give yourself infinite grenades. If you didn't even want to use a gun, then you could go full Rambo and use your knife while running around like Usain Bolt. Everything was so unbalanced and overpowered that somehow nothing was. You could make any class you want and make it work. The point is, Modern Warfare 2 was madness. It was messy, it was frustrating at times when you were getting spawn camped by a chopper gunner or joining a game when an enemy nuke was about to go off, but it was fun. In a time before skill-based matchmaking, you could hop on for a few hours and never be bored once. Sometimes you would absolutely destroy brand new kids who got the game for Christmas, and other times you would get absolutely spanked by what you can only assume are actual Optic members. Up until this point in gaming history, the purchase of a game was usually a pretty simple transaction, unless it was a live service like World of Warcraft. You saw a game you wanted to play and you paid for it. You owned the game forever and would only ever need to fork out more money for extra downloadable content like expansions. In my opinion, it is around this time where things start to decline in the games industry. Steadily at first, and then at a faster and faster pace. The first instance of a Battle Pass system that I could find any mention of is Dota 2's Compendium Pass from 2013. The concept of this pass was actually not terrible and is a far cry from the bastardized version we would see in later games. The way the original Compendium Pass would work is you buy it, and some of the proceeds would go towards the esports scene and prize funds, which directly prompts growth of the game and the competitive infrastructure. There is a reason why the top paid esports stars are all Dota 2 players after all. There were also stretch goals depending on the number of passes that were sold. The more passes sold, the more rewards would be offered to those who did purchase it. Now, although Dota 2 was the first game to commit this cardinal sin of gaming, it was not the reason it became such a popular method of monetization. Now, if you still think Fortnite means a 2-week period and not a game for ADHD-riddled 12-year-olds, then you may not be aware of the impact that this game had in around 2018. Fortnite would almost exclusively monetize itself with its Battle Pass, and it would make an absolute fortune. You see, Fortnite was free, anyone could download it and play, but you'd be using the default skin, and that sucked. To unlock the cool skins, like the Reaper, you would need to pay for the Battle Pass, and if your school friends all have it, then you wouldn't want to be the only one without it, would you? In addition to this fear of missing out, the game also puts you on a clock. Because a Battle Pass usually only lasts a certain amount of time, you need to sink as many hours as you can into the game to make sure you can unlock everything before it's gone for good. Battle Passes are a system that most major developers would come to adopt across various games, and is one half of the monetization woes that many gamers wish would finally be put to rest, and it is in no small part thanks to the popularization of Fortnite. The other half of these woes would be vilified to such an extent that certain countries would outlaw the practice entirely over concerns of children gambling. I am of course talking about loot boxes. Loot boxes first arose in the mobile gaming market in the late 2000s in Asia, but would not see mainstream implementation until much later. A loot box functions similarly to how loot would in an MMO. You open a box and you have a chance to receive certain items, with items of higher quality having a lower chance to drop. Loot boxes can usually be purchased with real money directly, or with an in-game currency to try to make you forget that you're actually spending your hard-earned cash. The original Overwatch had a loot box system, although because you paid for the game itself, these boxes would only feature cosmetic items and nothing that affected gameplay. Even this system would be complained about by Overwatch players, but they would soon come to realise that there are much, much worse systems out there. Soon, newer games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 would begin limiting your access to certain features to get you to buy loot boxes. Do you want to play as your favourite baddie daddy Darth Vader? Well, you had better have your wallet handy, or you'll need to spend 40 hours playing the game before you can even think about it. And this is for one character. Before the game released, there were reports it would take up to 4,000 hours of gameplay to unlock everything. That is an absurd number, and is probably close to the number of hours I've put into League of Legends over more than 10 years. DICE and EA would come under such heavy fire from this model that it was reworked before the game even released. But the damage was already done, and while there was a massive amount of hype for Battlefront 2, the sheer greediness of the game's creators put a lot of people off, and really damaged the game's reputation. This is not the first time that EA would be criticised for their money-grubbing practices either. The gaming giant has made a ludicrous amount of money by vomiting out basically the same FIFA game every year, knowing that 12-year-old kids are going to be forced to buy them for fear of missing out. FIFA games are functionally the same every single year, and there are never any new or groundbreaking features or significant graphical upgrades. But EA don't want new or innovative. They want safe, lazy, and profitable. And considering in 2021 the company made $1.6 billion solely from FIFA Ultimate Team packs, it's easy to see why. Now, FIFA and Battlefront 2 are online multiplayer games with a competitive element, so I can somewhat understand why people would want to pay money to get ahead if they don't have hours and hours of free time to sink into a game. But EA also made Dead Space 3, a single-player, third-person horror game where the whole story and plot revolve around you being stranded and powerless versus an outbreak of infectious aliens that are trying to kill you. The game is tense with a creepy atmosphere, and you'll constantly be hunting for ammo and new weapons to fight for your life. So why would you possibly be able to buy the best weapons in the game with real money? This is not only an obvious money grab by the developers, but it completely runs counter to what the game is all about. If you buy a horror game, but you can pay to make the game less scary or difficult, then why bother playing it at all? At that point, you're not actually paying for more content or gameplay, you're actually paying to experience less of a game. EA aren't the only ones who do this either. The recent Resident Evil 4 remake has just received its Mercenaries update, and many players were disappointed to discover you can purchase upgrade tickets with real money. This seems par for the course with recent Resident Evil games. Resident Evil Village had a survival resource pack that you could buy for 99 cents, which includes ammo, health, and lockpicks. Game developers and publishers have become so cynical that they will actually give you less game and expect you to pay for things that should come as standard. Very rarely do we get a complete shooter game that is original or a good shake-up of the formula, or a game so full of content that you can play for hundreds of hours and still not have unlocked everything. Or a game that is actually just so fun to play that you don't need a constant stream of unlocks from a battle pass or loot boxes to enjoy it. Now we get games which are free, but limit the amount of content you can get, completely single-player games where you can just pay to progress, or games which require an unrealistic amount of effort to progress as far as other people who simply buy XP boosts and unlocks. All of these factors, loot boxes, battle passes, paying for progression, can probably best be represented by one of the worst received games I've seen in recent years. Can you guess what it is? It's Diablo Immortal. Although the game reveal gave us perhaps the most tone-deaf and memed response to Backlash.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
People were rightly concerned over the decision to make the next installment of the Diablo series a mobile game. Mobile games are notoriously aggressive with their monetization and progression systems, often arbitrarily limiting how long you can play in a day or requiring players to wait literal months for upgrades to complete or buildings to finish. I'm looking at you, Clash of Clans town halls. Diablo fans were proved right in their apprehension of Diablo Immortal, as the game launched to terrible reviews, mostly citing the pay-to-win structure of the game. With estimates that it would cost over $100,000 to fully kit out your character. Streamer Quinn69 even went so far as to spend $15,000 on the game in search of a single level 5 gem. He finally obtained what he was looking for, however later in the same stream, he permanently deleted his only character and uninstalled the game in protest of the microtransactions that plagued the game. Blizzard have made more and more Scrooge McDuckian moves in the last few years. As mentioned earlier, Overwatch 2 has seen its fair share of complaints since releasing. It is essentially a slightly tweaked game from Overwatch 1 with tiny differences. There is one less player per team, and there's a new game mode. That's it. They didn't even include the PvE mode, which was the whole point of making a sequel. However, Blizzard used the relaunching of the game to completely rework its monetization system. Instead of paying for Overwatch and getting loot boxes as continuous rewards for playing, you now got the game for free, but need to pay to unlock cosmetics, and new characters need to be unlocked through the Battle Pass, which of course can be sped up by paying for the premium version. So, with all the complaints and backlash that EA, Blizzard and other gaming companies have received over recent years, they must be listening to feedback and learning from their mistakes, right? Well, let's take a look at the next major launch from Blizzard and see what Diablo IV will have in store for us. First off, the price of the base game has been increased from $60 to $70, which would be about £60 here in the UK. That's not a good start. That's for a digital code with direct download from the Battle.net launcher. There's no discs or anything to justify the increase. The game will also include a battle pass, boo, but it will only include cosmetics for the game. Yay! Except it will also contain XP boosts for your character and you can pay to unlock tiers in the pass. Damn, we were so close. Let's have a quick look at the other versions of the game that you can buy as a pre-order. If the already hiked up price tag hasn't put you off, then why not just shell out an extra 20 or 30 quid for the deluxe and ultimate editions? The deluxe edition will include the premium version of the battle pass for the first season, and you'll be able to access the game up to 4 days early, subject to server instability, time zone differences and error code 37 likelihood. The ultimate version of the Diablo IV game will include everything that the deluxe version does, but also grant a 20 tier skip for the battle pass and some cosmetic wings for your trouble. So generous. So why are these alternative versions of the game so poor in my eyes? Well, firstly, they're so expensive, even if I was going to play this game for a living, I wouldn't get either of them. Secondly, the extra benefits actually aren't that useful or important as a pre-order bonus when you really think about them. For £70 or £90, you will get up to 4 days early access before the game's release date, but Season 1 of Diablo IV will not be starting until 2 weeks after the game's initial release, at which point you will most likely be starting a new seasonal character and playing along with everybody else anyway. The other big issue with early access is Blizzard has had some of the worst game launches in history. Anyone around for Diablo 3 will probably have Vietnam-style flashbacks of this screen. I can think of nothing more irritating than spending all of that money on a game to be able to play it early and for the servers to shit themselves like they usually do. Even if it is only for 10 or 12 hours, then to me it just means that it's not worth the extra cost. Is there any hope for the future? This video may have painted the whole games industry as some capitalist overlords that want nothing more than to bleed every penny out of their demographics. I think that is true of some companies like EA and Blizzard, who are more interested in making games solely as marketing media for their in-game shops. But there are also other games developers and publishers who still try to make their games the absolute best that they can for you, the player, and not their shareholders. It's easy to see why a game like Elden Ring was so massively successful in comparison to even other From Software games. It was the first FromSoft game I ever played, and I put about 60 hours into it in 2 weeks. The difference between Elden Ring and most other games is that the design philosophy behind it was to make it the best possible experience, and to not compromise this experience in order to make a few extra bucks. Imagine if you could just buy ancient dragon smithing stones for real money, or buy an exclusive summon that was just better than all the others. The story would have still been told the same, the characters that you interact with wouldn't have changed, the lands between would still look incredible, but the experience would be hollow and meaningless. It would be less of an achievement to kill Melania or complete a no-death run. And it's not just large companies like From Software that are maintaining their vision in the face of a very large bag of money either. Indie developers are showing what can be done when you just have a passion for making fun games, with instant hits like Vampire Survivors offering a fantastic experience without shoving a shop in your face after every run. The point of this video is not to try and say you shouldn't buy Diablo 4's Ultimate Edition if you want to. I think you should if that's what you want. But we need to realise that games are slowly shifting away from the medium to tell stories or get lost in a rich fantasy world, and becoming a vehicle for extracting as much money out of you as possible. In my eyes, the only way this will ever start to change is if less people are paying for the premium battle passes that they don't like paying for anyway, and maybe use that money to support other games companies that actually care about their products. At the end of the day, do we want to live in a world where you have to pay extra to get elves to speak Elvish in a new Lord of the Rings game? Well, if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you did enjoy the video, then please leave a like and comment below. Or if you disagree with something in this video, then let me know and we can talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.